Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com, RockAuto.com, and State Farm. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
Thank you, Alec Webb, and welcome everyone to MotorWeek Podcast number 157. I'm John Davis, like Alec said, and around our table today is writer-producer Brian Robinson.
Hello, John.
Our road test producer, Ben Davis.
Hi.
And our assistant producer, Greg Carlos.
That is me.
And our online content coordinator, Patrick Lucas.
Hello.
And he's also our podcast producer.
Hello, hello.
A special hello to all of you joining us on Facebook Live today. Remember to drop some comments in or questions, and hopefully we'll get a chance to interact.
Share it with your friends.
Share it with your friends. Let everybody know, hey, Motor Week is on the air.
I just noticed there's a camera on Joe.
There.
Oh, is it really? Oh, wow. Hey, Joe.
And Joe Largo is back at Largo. That's Key Largo, and it's Joe Ligo.
Yep. That's where I wish I was.
One of our crack editors is back there manning the entire Facebook Live apparatus today.
I'll be filtering the comments and send you guys only the best ones. That's
he
what
actually
I do.
has a microphone today.
Let's keep it civil, people.
Wow, this is
Let's not make fun of any of us.
This is really
keep it simple. We just won't answer your question if you make fun of us.
Thanks,
Here we
Ed
go.
McMahon.
We have a lightning round, of course, a viewer question. I'm not sure if anybody's got a rant and rave, but they may by the time we get done with this.
Man buns.
And cars. And what?
Man buns. That's my.
Well, I guess
We'll get to it later.
I guess I'm really thick. You're going to have to explain that one to me.
Excuse myself.
We'll get to
All
it
right,
later.
2017 Chevrolet Camaro ZL1. We had it at Roebling Road in Savannah in January. This is the Z06 engine Camaro. I thought it was pretty awesome, but I didn't drive it as much as you guys did. What did you think?
I came away thoroughly impressed, and I think of all the cool cars we had down there, and we had a lot of cool ones. This one probably impressed me the most with, keeping price as a factor and just the sheer performance that I got out of it. Now, granted, I'm not a professional driver, but I felt like I could do things in that car that I probably could not in a lot of other cars.
Would you say, and I think, Brian, you were the one that
drive. You are a professional driver.
Yeah,
I guess technically by the definition.
Believe me, you are. There are different levels. I think Brian Robinson said that he felt, and correct me if I'm wrong, didn't you say something like you felt that this car had sort of broken the same kind of barrier that the current Corvette does, as being world class is an overused term, but basically being that good to stand on its own.
Stepping into the world stage more so than just the redneck rocket that people want to soup up. I think it definitely made it there. The big question I have: almost everything we said about it, we said the exact same things about the GT350R last year. So I'm wondering, what do you guys think about which one would you buy?
Oh, direct comparison.
Yeah.
Wow. I would still go GT350R camp, but by far and away, the ZL1 definitely impressed me. Not only is it capable
then?
in all. Why would I go GT350?
You just like the feel a little bit better? I remember that in that test we were over the top about that.
That's a good question. Yeah, I think I like the feel a little bit better. Maybe it comes down simply just to design and style. I think I like
visibility has something to do with it. You can certainly see out of the GT.
And we still didn't get a true apples to apples comparison because we did have the 10-speed auto in the
which was the
ZL1,
new thing.
And it took a little bit to get used to, especially on a track that we'd driven so many laps on. And I have an idea in my head of what gear I need to be in which corner. And this one, I kind of had to throw that all out of the window because there's so many gears and they're so tightly spaced that it took a few laps to get used to. But if you left it to shift on its own, I felt it got a little bit confused. It wasn't quite where I wanted it to be, but just used the paddles and it was fine, despite the paddles feeling kind of cheap.
Yeah, they needed to be upgraded a little bit for that price.
Yeah.
I should note that of all the cars we took down there, some of them we had some severe tire problems with. This car we did not. We ran it hard for 4 days, and it had enough tire to drive home.
Yeah, between the brakes not fading a bit and the tires holding up, it was probably the most well-rounded.
Which to me says it was really set up really well.
Wasn't
there optional brakes that we didn't get on that car? Was that car?
Does it have carbon ceramic brakes as an option? Because it didn't have them, I don't think.
It could have been a different car I was thinking about.
Yeah, it had
the Lambo didn't
which,
have it.
Yeah.
Didn't have carbon
That
ceramics.
was something else, I think.
That ZL1 sounded amazing, too. It was a howler.
But did it sound as good as the GT350R, which I don't think it did. It was close, but I don't think it sounded as good.
I mean, it was close. It all depends on your flavor.
It was plenty loud, though. No debating that.
For sure.
Well, the only other question I've got, are they still even apples to apples? Because let's face it, the GT350R really is supposed to be a track car, and it's devoid of almost all accoutrements to drive on the street.
So then you just go GT350 versus ZL1? I mean, what are we actually going to compare
some
these
extra
two?
weight.
I was thinking there could be a ZL1R package at some
Well,
point.
no, they just announced a ZL1 1LE,
Oh.
which is even more track.
Yeah.
Almost like remember the Boss 2, then the
Right.
Laguna Seca version.
Oh, I see.
Almost like that.
So that would be a
That would be probably a direct
We need to make
comparison.
that happen.
Yeah. All right, thanks, guys. Let's move on to another car that I think we came away with from Roebling very impressed with, the Jaguar F-Type SVR. We said in the time, and we also have said in our road test, and Brian Robinson, again, is responsible for this.
I just
sort of
read
quote.
other people's quotes. I don't
Yeah.
come up
Well,
with it myself.
The best, well, we were talking about the F-Type in general, the best non-American muscle car we'd ever driven. And this car was like over the top in that
It
aspect.
certainly has that feel. It feels more like, a Camaro or a Mustang versus getting in like a 3 Series or M3 or something like that. It's just big, loud, heavy.
And beautiful. I mean, it's a gorgeous car, I think. You drove it a lot. Greg.
Yeah. I drove it plenty, and I actually was able to. I drove so much of the regular F-Type, the coupe, and the Roadster that I felt like I had a great baseline for when I jumped in the SVR, and it was pretty shocking at how much better the SVR was than the Roadster we had at Roebling a few years ago. I mean, this thing was really planted. Yeah, it steps out a little bit, but I mean, again, this was all-wheel drive, correct?
Yep.
But that's what you want.
Exactly, right. I mean, you would just put the power down, and it would just hunker down and just blast out of corners, man. I think the suspension tuning that they did and everything else just really came together. It was another car that I was shocked at how far they came from the original car that I drove. So, well, I guess the podcast is over, right?
No.
No, for the
It's a mic drop statement. Huh?
Looking on paper, the updates, it didn't look that comprehensive, but like you say, on track,
it's
it felt
a great
like a totally
package.
different car.
Yeah. It reminds me of, you were talking about the Mustang and the GT350 when it came out. We were just all kind of aghast at what a great total package it was. And that sort of seems like the same thing applies here. Another vehicle that we were going to talk about today, and the poor thing has to follow these two awesome performance cars, and that's the 2017 Nissan Rogue, which is not all new, but it's been thoroughly updated. What was that?
I was trying to create like a little enthusiasm.
Oh, well, you know what?
I think displeasure.
No.
Look, what Nissan,
love
to me,
Nissan.
what Nissan has a great habit of doing is taking a market that's owned by somebody else and sliding in an incredibly capable alternative.
Slightly cheaper version.
Slightly cheaper, maybe a few more features for the money. And when you look at this and look at the Rogue, which was already, a solid performer, and look at the updates, and they've slid it under the new CRV, and the CRV is probably going for a pretty much full list everywhere. I think it's a very comparable vehicle. I don't know if I'd buy it instead of a CRV if I had the money for both, but I was impressed that how solid it was and what a good, family of 5 little SUV it is.
The big news was a hybrid version now, which joins the RAV4 hybrid, is the only other compact crossover that you can get a hybrid in.
But we had a problem with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a problem. It was not very hybridy. I mean, you could not spend very much time in electric only, and almost any throttle at all. And
the fuel economy wasn't that outstanding.
Fuel economy wasn't anywhere as good as the RAV4. But, I mean, for a first, entry, maybe
I should say, I think it was still well over 30. So, I mean, it wasn't bad for...
Correct. I think it was right around 30, whereas we
30.
got like almost mid-30s in the RAV4.
Yeah.
But, I mean, for a crossover, sure, that's fantastic.
But often when people come to me and they're looking for, compact crossover utilities, and you run through the normal group of suspects, including RAV4 and CRV, and you take a look at Hyundai and Kia, and then you say, oh, yeah, I forgot the Nissan Rogue. And a lot of times that's the one they end up buying because they're good deals on them. And I think it's also important, given that fuel economy is not quite as important to people as it was, say, 2 years ago, that they've gone ahead and come out with a hybrid, because that thing will come back into fuel economy will come back into fashion some point, someday.
What do you think about how they marketed it with the premiere of Star Wars Rogue One, and they kind of slid in there and
I don't think I'm qualified to answer that, because that just didn't do a darn thing for me.
Fun displays at the auto shows, I'll say that.
Yeah, they did have
what?
Like big
fun
display.
Yeah. I mean, it was clever. I'm glad that I'm sure their marketing people were all on top of that to do it. It wouldn't sway me to buy it, would you?
Probably not. I mean, but I could see where it definitely get. Well, we were just talking about.
But I guess you got it better known within the.
Well, yeah, exactly. Because
we
just said that it can get lost next to RAV4 or CRV, and they took whatever they could, and they brought a lot of attention.
Did they actually have one in the movie? I didn't see it.
No,
it would have been cool
like
to see some kind of full-blown Star Wars fan-based Rogue, though, maybe with like an X-wing paint scheme on it that was really battle damaged and
they need to hire you, Benny,
and then have a super limited run. That would really get a lot of attention.
That probably would sell okay.
There was like a limited.
They did. They had.
There was a limited. There was a Rogue,
Star
Wars edition.
Or you could also get one with like.
Do you remember?
It came with a helmet.
Yeah, you could get a Death Trooper helmet.
That's weak.
Well, I mean, not really, because if you're really into Star Wars, it was the only way you could get an exact replica from like a Lucas approved replica of that helmet.
Well, whatever.
We do have a question regarding Nissan, going back to the Jaguar F-Type. A guy said, you had said earlier the F-Type was the best non-American muscle car. Well, Vince wants to know your thoughts on the GTR as a sort of non-American, sports car, muscle car kind of thing. How's that compare?
Well, I think it falls in that category, but I don't know. I think it's kind of a. I think
checks off all the boxes of it,
and it's a real. It hasn't been redone since it came out. Well, it's still basically the same car, though.
Yeah,
but it isn't like.
I don't look at it as a muscle car. It's like a.
It's really sophisticated
it's like
with turbos.
It's a tuner.
Except it rattles and squeaks.
I had a good one there.
I do like that aspect of it, but I mean, I don't know.
It's like a stitched together Frankenstein version.
All right, there you go.
Italian exotic, American muscle car, and Asian compact.
Now, does that make it a muscle car? I don't.
Not to
quite
me.
think
It's more of
so.
an exotic, upper level.
I don't get any muscle car.
I think you could group all these cars into a pony car class, though, because certainly the GTR is in the same vein as the Camaro. I mean, it almost to me looked like the Camaro ZL1, the way it looked now and at the track. It looks like what the GTR, by all means, should look like by now. You know what I mean?
I agree.
So yeah, I mean it's a pony car, much like
Turbo
would you
6
consider
versus
F-Type.
V8s.
But I mean,
but they're all about the same size, same configuration, two doors. I mean it's all-wheel drive. But yeah, I mean.
But when Nissan launched it, it was basically launched as kind of like both a Corvette fighter and an entry-level exotic, and I think that's probably still kind of what they are doing with
it. Well, we have a GTR test coming up very shortly.
We do indeed.
Our answer is it's complicated.
Whoever you are.
Watch the next podcast.
What I meant to say was muscle car, no. But if you widen that definition up to be pony car, then yeah, you can throw it in there.
Yeah. So I hope that. What's his name?
His name was Vince.
Vince. I hope that confuses you less than we thought it would.
And on the subject of Star Wars, Ryan agrees with you, John, that the Star Wars thing wouldn't be enough to convince him to buy a Rogue.
No, but I think the point was made that was a very valid one, that it probably got the Rogue noticed by a younger audience than would normally be attuned to it. And, the younger buyer out there, if they can afford a new vehicle, they are looking for advanced technology, and that's where the hybrids come in. So it was probably a pretty smart marketing move on a couple of levels that didn't do much for me.
I was going to add something. Joe does such a great job with the video version of this podcast. I'm just going to throw something out here just to make him work a little extra hard. I can remember when Star Wars was launched in the 70s, Toyota Celica came in a Star Wars package. I mean, the thing was Star Wars mural from front to back, and they made a couple of them and gave them
Writing this
away.
down?
So now I need to find a picture of that. Is
They
that
were
what you're
awesome
Yeah,
looking,
yeah.
and I think Rogue should have done something like that.
All right, wow.
All right, let's move on to our lightning round. We've got 2 minutes to debate a trending automotive topic. And within the last couple of weeks, both Consumer Reports and J.D. Powers have released major new car surveys. This is something they do every year. And the top and the bottoms of the list were extremely similar. When looking at the Consumer Reports list, their top brands were Audi, Porsche, BMW, Lexus. Their bottom were Jeep and Fiat. And then you go over to the dependability study that that J.D. Powers put out. And the top of their list is Lexus again, Porsche again, but Toyota's up there too, and Jeep and Fiat at the bottom. My point is you've got two big polls, both have a lot of individual owner input. They're done totally different. The tops and the bottoms seem to be pretty much in line. But the rest of the polls, the results are totally different, and the order is often way, way different. Like Toyota was in J.D. Powers was number 3. They were well down the pack in Consumer Reports. So my point is, what do we tell people that look at polls and they use these things to make a decision about buying a car? How do we help them get beyond, a singular poll? What do we tell them? What do you guys tell them?
Well, much like any other, you got to do your research, not just one place. I think you can, since they're both very similar at the top and the bottom, cars that are very good are very good.
But
cars
the middle
that are very
is where
bad
most people
are
buy
very bad.
stuff.
Correct. Things in the middle, you just got to do your research. And, I'm not saying don't be swayed by these things, but you have to remember they are just surveys. They're not based on actual, this car has been serviced this many times by this dealer. It's based on a survey. How many times have you had your car in? Maybe people remember correctly, maybe they don't. Maybe some people are pickier than others. So these are just surveys. It's not hard data.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I would just say kind of triangulate your information. There's so much information online, on TV that, if you really, buying a car is such a big decision that you should really be putting in your research. And I'd say most times that while there is some inconsistency poll to poll, if you go through like a dozen different outlets, they should all roughly say the same thing. You should start seeing the best cars rise to the top. Right. You'll find these trends. And if all else fails, start going on to forums and look up what real owners actually have to say about the cars. Granted, you'll run into the nut jobs who are just going off about whatever. I certainly can be classified as a nut job. No. But, there's just so much information. Just make sure you get as much as you can, and you'll naturally start seeing trends.
Buy what you like and just take care of it.
Here's something also to remember. 30 years ago or 25 years ago, these polls were mostly about things gone wrong, things that break. Because cars are so incredibly reliable today, these polls, if you read the fine print, often cars get marked down the most because you don't like the way the infotainment system works. Or the government says I should get 40 miles per gallon, I'm only getting 35. Yeah. So a lot of the things that people mark down cars on today are subjective.
It's exactly what I was going to say. It's become much less about like facts and figures and more about like how satisfied are you with this?
Exactly.
And, satisfied can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Infotainment is definitely caused a lot of problems recently with them freezing up.
One of our commenters wants to know, what's the effect of the fact that dissatisfied customers are more likely to respond than somebody who's just kind of okay with their car? Does that sway it?
Good point.
That's very true. I will say I think the Consumer Reports reader space is extremely loyal about filling out, and they have this poll. But what Consumer Reports has done is it used to be all about their readers, but now they basically use their own test data along with readers. And J.D. Powers is a 35,000 blind poll. It's very scientific. So I think both of those kind of get beyond that, the fact that most people only respond when they've got a negative.
There's a good Buick joke in there, but it's probably not appropriate.
The bell just rang. You can't say it.
All right, thanks, guys.
You're
Let's move
welcome,
on
Buick.
now to our. All right, any rants and raves? Anything that's in the last few weeks that seems to bubble to the surface? We haven't had that much really rotten weather, so
Yeah, really good weather, actually.
yeah.
Global warming, what's the deal?
I'm too
That's
happy.
my rant.
Well,
It's not global warming anymore, sorry.
No,
It's
it's
climate
climate
change.
change.
Yes.
Well, what worries me is we've had such a warm winter and early spring. I just worry about what August and September are going to be like, or July and August. So, have you noticed, or has anybody noticed, an increase in the propensity of everybody tailgating everywhere you go? I mean, it's like
Doesn't really surprise me anymore.
it seems to be ratcheting up. That no matter where you go, there's someone who you can't see the grill, basically, and they're just on you. And of course, what's the natural reaction when you get tailgated? You slow down. Mm-hmm. Just because you're
Reach
irritated.
for your tire iron. Right.
That's usually what I do, as you've seen.
I have a recommendation when you're finished.
No, I'm done.
I had a Dakota pickup with no rearview mirror that I drove for a couple of years. It's the most peaceful thing ever.
Well, you know what? It's
You
funny
just
you mention
ignorance is
that.
bliss.
When it's night, or even when it's not night, if somebody pulls up behind me, I make a big deal about reaching up to the mirror and turning it so I can't see them. Now, I've obviously still got side mirrors, so I got some clue what's going on. And I'm sure that's not the safest thing in the world to do, but it's like, dude, if you're behind me that close, I don't want to see you. And I just want to tune you out. So I
just
get
think
it.
it's
I
awesome
get
that you
it.
said
I get
dude.
it. Yeah, dude. Yeah,
We need to
I'm
isolate
too old to use that word, or maybe because I
very
am old,
unprofessional.
I'm using that
We
word.
need to isolate that and use that as a sound drop.
Dude.
All right, we have a viewer question. James asked,
James.
new vehicles have adaptive or automatic emergency braking that we test for here on MotorWeek. Do they recognize motorcycles as well as cars? It's talking about when the automatic braking senses something in its past. Just wondering because I'm a motorcyclist as well as a driver.
Valid
I think you're
point.
pretty much out of luck.
I thought
Some of them have
was gonna
pedestrian
refer to you.
detection, which I guess
Looks
would.
for a smaller mass.
Correct, but I think you're pretty much out of, I mean, because remember when we started testing the braking things, like
Well-
cardboard boxes and stuff like that, it wouldn't work on those.
Yeah.
We had to have a very big.
I think we should
And
get a
have hair
motorcycle.
under
We
it.
should get a motorcycle
Well, I
dummy
mean,
now.
I think there's a different level of
That's me.
attention needed for a motorcycle too. I mean, I think it's a lot easier to be distracted while you're driving a car. Now, I'm not saying you can't be distracted while you're driving a motorcycle, but I just think the need for it in a motorcycle isn't quite
Well,
what
no,
it is.
no,
in a
no,
No,
motorcycle.
he's talking
Well,
about
no,
can
the
the
question.
Will a
systems in
car
the cars
recognize a motorcycle?
recognize a motorcycle.
Oh, I've
You're
misread
gonna
the
get
question. I'm
fun.
sorry, James. I'm an idiot.
For him as a motorcyclist.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to get
He's
hit by a
worried
car.
about getting rear-ended by the tailgate.
I'll be honest with you, James. I would not assume that the automatic braking systems will see you because if you're directly in front of a car, you have a very small cross section that car is.
That's why you
coming
should just
up.
constantly swerve in the lane.
Yeah.
That might help.
Absolutely.
Chances
No, don't
are
do that.
the ones that have pedestrian detection will probably work okay. But we found, I don't know about you, every car we drive, the systems seem to be set to a different degree of sensitivity.
Yeah.
Some you can drive all the time and you never get a warning about getting too close. Others, the Chrysler Pacifica we've got, every time you got the least little bit close to somebody, the bells and whistles went off.
I think, and also some of them, especially, I think, in particular, Volvo, from what I can remember, a lot of those are getting better at sort of tracking movement
Right.
within its field of view, as
That's
opposed
the
to
pedestrian
just
detection.
right, just sort of like bouncing a signal back, and if something bounces back that's wide, it's like, oh, it must be a car. So I think as they all sort of get to that next level where they can sort of track movement within their, cone of view, that I'm sure that'll come into it, because I know that I've read stuff about them trying to track like dogs or like deer or like
Cyclists.
animals in front of you.
Moose, because you're going to need all of that for autonomous driving.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So give it a little bit of time.
Yeah. Moose would scare me.
Just keep an eye on your six
do
from this
scare
point
me.
out, though.
Yeah, moose. The prospect of a 1,500-pound moose coming through the windshield. not a good
LED
one.
brake lights on your
Yeah.
bike too.
Yeah, that might be a big help, James. Make sure you're as visible as possible. Okay, I think that pretty much wraps up our podcast number 157. I want to thank everybody around the table: Brian Robinson, Ben Davis, Greg Carlos, Patrick Lucas. Patrick's also the producer of our podcast. our audio engineer, Jim Bigwood, who always works very hard to make sure that we sound good, even if what comes out of our mouth isn't very intelligent, and our podcast creator, Bob Mixter. And I was only talking about myself, guys. Everybody out there, we hope you enjoyed the Facebook Live podcast today. Let us know. Joe, anything else before we Joe Ligo, who's been running the whole Facebook Live thing today.
We got anything else?
Anything else?
A couple of agreements on the tailgating thing.
Yeah, we
people in
thank you
general
very
think
much.
that's
I agree with those.
As they're
agreements.
driving down
point.
the road and tailgating.
And one thank you.
Yeah.
The guy said thank you because MotorWeek is to blame for his automotive obsession.
I was going to say for his automotive accident. Thanks.
No.
The obsession is a good thing.
So he blames you guys for making him be addicted to cars, which, I mean,
We
what are you
will
gonna
accept that
As long as
responsibility.
you're not addicted to anything else, that's cool.
Thanks, everybody, for watching. And for those you listening today, remember MotorWeek can be seen every week on most public television stations across the country, as well as on the Velocity Cable channel. Till next time, I'm John Davis. For all of us at MotorWeek, keep the sunny side up, and thanks for being a part of MotorWeek.
You've been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com, RockAuto.com, and State Farm. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at motorweek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series, each week on your local PBS station.